Morpheus. That is their latest, called Power of Seven. It's a complete instrumental off their Waterfall album. And if you want to find it, you can go to your favorite streaming service or to indietunes.com, and you can download the album in its entirety. Well, actually, it's set up as a slow release waterfall. We're up to 5 singles released so far. And that's Power of Seven. That's the new video for it, made by Jeff Pearson. Check it out. It's on our YouTube channel. Go there as well. Hey, thanks for joining us tonight. This is the Indie Show. Sean and I were talking about the things that can go wrong when you do a live show. And this might be part of the topic tonight. Things that can go wrong when you do a live show. I'm sure he could fill us in on a few of those things. But before we do, I want to introduce this guy from the East Coast, my co-host with the most, Sean McKenna from the Podcast Barstools and Bandtalk. Rimshots with Sean.
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, what's going on, dude?
What's going on?
Back over here. I'm gonna get rid of that that video. What'd you think of that video?
Very cool. Very cool. I wouldn't consider myself like a prog guy, but I definitely like and respect and love what those guys do. They put everything into it. Sounds total pro. Great stuff.
Yeah, listen to the drums in that. I mean, crazy, eh?
Oh yeah, no, it's you can't pick on it at all, other than there might not be that many women at the stops, kid.
Well, yeah.
No, it's fantastic material.
Here's the interesting thing about Visions of Morpheus. Those guys can play those songs live.
Well, it's funny. They'd be a good guys to talk to about tracks, which is the flavor conversation with the and he talked about how I've said it before. It's been going on since the '60s. People think it's a new thing, but so yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Those guys that they play periodically at the Rock Pile. That's in Toronto, right?
Yes.
And I want to try and catch one of their shows because Jeff's a pretty much a perfectionist when it comes to producing music, and that is all self-produced.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. I've talked to so many people, certain genres, like you'll see an artist and they'll be like, okay, well, we wrote with 2 guys from Nashville, and we got it produced by a guy in Nashville, and so the calculator's rolling in my head, and you do all this work, which is great, but people think that the formula is that's going to impress people and that's going to draw people in, and the simple fact of the matter is it doesn't really have that much of an effect like they think it would. So I get a lot of respect for people that self-produce, man. It's not a simple task.
It's an interesting concept when you consider that there have been a number of professional musicians who have gone on to become producers as well as continuing to be musicians.
I had a conversation with a gentleman today, and he was talking about Todd Kern's band, Age of Electric, and they played a show in the Whiskey, a Go-Go. Bob Rock was in Los Angeles mixing the Black album by Metallica, and he went out and he saw them and decided to start working with them. And this gentleman, Mike, said that they did demos, not recordings of the album, but demos for 2 months. And they said Bob Rock was so meticulous that it was almost like, oh my gosh, like 5 guitars on one song and stuff like that.
Well, and here's an interesting thing. I mean, it's well produced. It's well performed by some great musicians. There's 4 of them in the band, 2 guitar players, a drummer, and a bassist. And it's interesting because when they came to me and talked to me about distributing their music and promo and pushing their music and trying to get some more listens on it,
yeah.
It was an interesting conversation because they had released the album and it kind of went out into the void. right? So it didn't
Yep.
even really, I think it even got by their niche audience. I mean, anybody that likes Dream Theater would like these guys.
Yep.
Because there's that, if you listen to the intensity of that song, there's a lot of Dream Theater influence in there. And then if you talk to guys like Jeff, and I want to have him on the show because I think he'd be a great guy to interview.
For sure. And I mean, again, I don't profess to know that world. However, I do from talking to people that are in it. It can be very particular, very critical, very. I don't know the exact word I'm looking for, but it's like either
Right.
they love you or they have no use for you whatsoever as a band.
Right. Right.
Whereas it's not all. And again, I think it's just because of they're used to seeing so many bands that play so precisely, with so many notes and whatnot that.
Well, what I find really interesting is I think this time around, because I said to him, let's pull the whole album down, except for the songs that are already getting a little bit of traction. Okay.
Right.
And I think we pulled everything but 2 songs. And then what we actually did was re-release those 2 songs back to back kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then let them catch up the streams. And then we pulled their original publishing all together. And we started sticking with the waterfall scheme of releasing the album.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because here's the streams on each single. Now, these are just sort of aggregate numbers, right?
Yep. Yep.
So Catharsis was the first single to come out, and it got 1,968 streams.
Wow, that's really good.
Through Fire, hang on a second. Gotta grab that. Where is it? There's several different releases here. Through Fire and Flame is another one that was released on that waterfall as well, and it's at 1,752 streams. Ghost at 1,724, Beyond at 1,456, and the latest one, Power of 7, already at 1,906.
So I'll tell you why those are interesting, important numbers, because as more you delve into, I'm going to give you an example. Artists that I know, I don't know them, but I kind of know them, went through great, I don't know what the word I'm looking for. They just put this big sort of thing into trying to do this song, and they released it. And I don't think the song's cracked 250 views on YouTube in 3 or 4 weeks. But those are 250 actual views because nobody's repping the song. They hired this group of people who said they were going to rep the song, but it turns out they're not. So 250 people actually tuning into you is impressive. It's 250 people that took time out of their life to look at your video.
Exactly. And when you break that down and you start looking at the audience, okay, that have listened over the last 28 days, right? So they've had 186, this is just aggregate numbers, 186 aggregate listeners on a consistent basis, right? In that same time period, gained 3,330 streams. And they were added to 38 playlists and got 26 saves.
Yeah, there you go.
So those are statistics that come from Spotify for artists. So, and they give you aggregate numbers across different services, right?
Yep.
So they're really good analytics that can give you a sense of how well something's doing. The interesting thing is this last single hasn't been out 2 weeks yet, and it's already outranking the other singles.
As it should, though, because if people are kind of cluing in, and the one thing I'm going to point out too, and I don't know if you knew this, but everybody knows about that Microsoft thing, grounded planes and all that. That's still affecting numbers. I don't know if you knew that or not. I was talking to somebody today about my personal YouTube channel, and there's some numbers that they said are in the cache that I should start seeing, because I was like, oh man, I'm doing all this work and some stuff's not happening, and it's a pain in the ass.
Listen, I don't think that internet failure the other day was, I think it affected everything.
Oh yeah, no question, it did.
And I think it impacted the bean counters. Hopefully it didn't wipe their cache memory.
Yeah, well, and I mean, I know, I know moms that were waiting for child tax benefit checks and stuff like that that didn't get them on time. And you can believe this, had a car loan. Bank actually called them and complained to them that they missed their payment when it was the bank that was messed up. So go figure that one out. And no, it wasn't
Oh
me.
man, there you go. There you
Yeah.
go. Technology isn't it grand?
Well, it's just it's laughable how they keep, like, if you go to the bank and you put cash in the bank machine, they want you to do it with no envelope. Like, it's like, take your rejected items, shake. You can be there 25 minutes to put in, $40. It's ridiculous.
Right. Yeah, your video is like,
I don't know.
I don't know, something weird. Like I said, there's the gremlins in the system.
Don't know.
Those damn gremlins.
Yeah.
Your voice is talking, but your face ain't moving.
Wouldn't be the first time.
There's a title for a song.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good country tune.
Well, a friend of mine used to say, your lips are moving, but nothing's coming out.
Well, that's kind of happened. Actually, your face is frozen up, and your audio's fine, but your video sucks.
Oh well. I'll tell you what
Is.
doesn't suck. What doesn't suck is me.
Oh man, when
There
you
would be
I think
be several people in Halifax that would try to refute that, but I would stand tall.
yeah, we're gonna just change your name to Sean Headroom.
There you go. Well, here, let me bounce out and come back in. Let me
Yeah,
bounce out and come back in.
do that. We'll see what happens. We got some gremlins in the system tonight, and never a dull moment when you do a live show. You can hit the chat button there if you want to join our chat room, and we'll see what's going on. Now your cameras, let's see if I can add you in here. There you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's doing it again. It's so weird, man. It's those gremlins.
I was standing there or sitting here not moving. I was just staring straight ahead.
Oh, maybe that's part of it.
That's pretty impressive.
I mean, there's some pretty impressive numbers that you can pull from some of these things. Now, you wouldn't get those numbers unless you publish music appropriately, right? And we learned the value of that, didn't we? You and I had a learned lesson about that.
100%.
And do you recall the learned lesson?
There's been many. I don't. Was it the one where the RFRC wasn't properly put on the song?
That's right. The ISRC was not properly embedded in the soundtrack used for the video.
Yeah.
And at the 11th hour, we made some changes.
Yeah, I remember I was on the back seat of a car screaming at Ken when he wasn't even on the other line, because I was like, ah!
It was one of those epiphanies where you go, you know what? I wonder if there are a lot of artists out there who are putting out music videos but not using encoded tracks.
I did a track for somebody, and it wasn't the track that I played on. It was the one before that was getting radio airplay locally here, and it wasn't even registered with SOCAN. And I said to him, you have to do, you probably have no hope in HE double hockey sticks of getting back royalties for any airplay, but you have to get that done, because if they continue to do it, you're going to be out, man. And he has. But it's a great PSA for working with somebody, because I tell you, it's a lot of work.
One thing I haven't looked at in SOCAN, I have all of our songs registered with SOCAN, and we use BMI in the US.
Yeah.
And I think the reason that I chose BMI is because they're the largest of the performance rights collection royalties.
Yeah.
Deanbo.
My buddy Deanbo had this post today, and I'm going to follow up with him on it, because I thought it was a great idea. He had this idea for a pub crawl in Halifax, And Halifax is known for its pub. People that live here, a lot of people don't know this. So if you come to Halifax, you have the waterfront. It's like down the bottom of a hill,
Right.
and that's where the first part of the bars are that close at about 12:30. Then you walk up the hill to the next level of bars. They close about 2. Then you walk to the very top of the hill, and those are the ones that are open until 3:30. It was actually designed like that because the thought was as people are leaving drunk, they got to walk so they get a little bit more sober. And so Halifax is always it's true. So Halifax is always an interesting place for that type of thing. So Deanbo had a great idea for a pub crawl today, and I'm going to follow up with them on it because I thought it was pretty cool.
Well, that would be interesting because there'd be a lot of people crawling by the end of the night, I'm sure.
You'd be surprised, man. We're a resilient, but I mean, you got a hill, you got like bad weather in the wintertime. We're a resilient lot out here.
No doubt about that. So, I mean, when I look at the opportunity to be able to pull various statistics, and you can take a look at, the engagement of your demographic, for example, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what percentage do you think of the audience for Visions of Morpheus are male or female?
That's not a nice question to ask me.
What do you think their largest demographic is?
The largest demographic, I would say, be somewhere between the 35 to 54.
Actually, 35 to 59 has the largest group of people listening to their music.
Which, interestingly enough, is the best demographic because they have the...
Yeah, so here's the 27% of listeners are age 35 to 44.
Yeah.
And 38% of their listeners are 45 to 59. Now, these are people with a lot of disposable income.
100%. And they are the people that like to sit at home and dive into music. They don't just they're not a one and done, right?
Yeah, it's interesting, and not surprisingly, there's a larger male focus on their music.
Yeah.
Because for whatever reason, I mean, is it because we're all just, guys are just primitive apes and we just like,
no.
metal, because it's weird because guys tend to really like prog rock.
Well, the thing is, women, for the most part, more so than men, like to dance. Like they like to move, and so prog rock by very nature stops and starts and time changes, and so it's not easy music to dance to. And so what ends up happening is, I've seen it a ton where you're sitting there watching this amazing band, and all the girls are like, "Oh, when are the cute bands coming on?" Because that's what they want, and it's infuriating. It's infuriating. It really is. I think it has to do with more than that, more than anything. So those demographics are not surprising to me at all.
It's fun. It's funny. I remember an interview of Geddy Lee's where he talked about, looking out in the audience and seeing all men.
Oh, listen, you must have seen the joke that was going around. And it was the picture of a lineup at a washroom at a Rush concert. It's like, 800 guys and 2 girls. It was,
It's interesting though. Their demographic did shift over the years. They did attract more of a female listening audience, and there are, more female listeners these days that are into prog rock than ever used to be, and I think it's because of the art side of prog rock, the way the lyrics are written, the way that the music carries the lyric of the song.
Yeah, it could. And there's certain individuals who just like music, right? And they'll listen to music regardless of what the genre is. And, everybody who knows me knows I aren't one of those. I mean, I'm very quite tunnel vision with what I like. Now, you know what? I've been swayed by things that I wouldn't normally be swayed by. So it can happen. But then keep in mind, it doesn't make me the ruler of the music world. It's just my
The great thing about music, there's something for everybody.
100%. And some people get wild at me, like, you're the way you are because you don't like jazz. Well, no, I'm the way I am because I don't like jazz. I mean, you know what I mean? It's, I don't, jazz is it's an incredible challenging, art form to play. I don't dispute that. I just, I'm part of this Facebook page that's dedicated to Hal Blaine, the late great drummer that played with the Wrecking Crew, that played on more hit songs than anybody in the history of the world. And he
Mhm.
always talks about hanging out with Miles Davis, and Miles Davis used to say, "I don't like crowds. That's why I play jazz." So
It's I mean, it's just an interesting genre in itself, and like I said, some people get turned on to it, and some people don't because they're, I think we all have a limited capacity at some
yeah,
point in time in terms of what we listen to, right? I mean, everybody's got, you know, when I talk to musicians, some musicians don't listen to a lot of music.
uh, you know, um, I can relate to that because I'm around it so much that usually the last thing I want to do when I have 5 minutes is listen to a song because I'm figuring out songs, I'm recording songs, I'm pushing songs. The last thing I want to do is listen to a song. Um, and keep in mind your musical taste. Don't let some Yahoo, like the guy that's sitting here talking right now, shade you out of your lane on what your likes and dislikes are. Because the beautiful part about music is nobody's wrong, and I admit that, and hopefully hopefully people get that. Um, you know, because you can not like something but respect it, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I'm processing artist music for publishing, right? When I'm putting metadata into tracks,
Oh, just hold on a
um,
second. So you're going to talk
yeah,
metadata. So David from Trickshot brought up 67% male, 28% female, which is where our stats are going to go during this conversation. Over to you.
that's interesting in itself, right?
And God love David. You were a gem, Sean McKenna. Can tell you from your Facebook post. Well, I don't know that everybody would believe that, but I thank you, sir.
David, appreciate your comments as always. David's having a bit of a problem pulling down self-published music, um, and he's been after the publishing company that they worked with previous to working with the label, and we're trying to get old material down so that we can re-release it under Indie Tunes.
That's annoying. Wouldn't it be as simple as take it down?
Yeah, I mean, you would think it would be that simple. I know an artist that I've been was working with who goes under an alias, and he was telling me, some of the stories you hear from people about this stuff is amazing.
Well, this gentleman that I talked to today, and I will be interviewing him. He told me a fascinating story about Bruce Allen. Right? You know who Bruce Allen is?
I'm
Br- Brian
familiar with the
Adams'
name.
manager,
Oh yeah, okay, yep, all right,
like managed any Canadian artist who was worth did anything. He
right.
said Bruce Allen for his entire career operated on nothing but a handshake. And if he liked you and you liked him, the handshake was good enough. And if you wanted to leave, he would shake your hand and say, "Best of luck to you." And
Okay,
you think about that.
Dave puts us in the chat. Still not a word from Utopia. He even put their name there. They even have a form to take it down. And here's the interesting thing. So, as a publisher, if somebody orders a takedown, you have an obligation to do that takedown.
Yeah.
And so he's been after them to do a takedown. And it's really, really hard for us to manage re-released material when it's still published under the previous publisher.
I would imagine.
It has a bit of a negative impact on things. Plus, the other thing is too, is that you can't really. There's a lot of artifact there. You don't know if they're still actively supporting that music. You don't know if they're, what their end game is at all.
Well, and I mean, it's just one more example of how the world is weighted to see musicians not be successful, right? Um, and it's infuriating. It really is.
It really does seem that for some reason, call it a dark cloud or a deck stacked against you. It
Well,
sort of feels that way. I mean, and I'm not saying that poor musicians, but there is that element where there's a lot of negative things that pull people down from being able to succeed.
Well, did you see the thing that I sent you today? My keyboard player Darren sent me this. Spotify stock jumps after reporting record profits, strong guidance amid turnaround plan. So best I can tell, the turnaround plan is to really stick it to people. That being said, I posted the headline because here in Canada, the land of the free, home of the brave, where we're not allowed to post any news articles anymore, or we can't. I posted that. Good old Michael Branville. I love you, Michael. That's great news. And I understand where he's coming from on that because his business model, Spotify is something that he needs. But if you go and you look at it, it's about a whole awful lot of people making money off music that ain't the people that are making the music.
Well, and the thing is, it's the deals that are out there with the people that are making the music. I mean, oftentimes those royalties rights belong to record labels. They don't belong to the artist, or they belong to a publishing company,
Yep.
right? So if the publishing company owns 100% of the rights to the music, the publishing company gets to decide whatever the artist gets, and that's based on a contract between them and the artist.
Well, so you can see Gene Simmons over my shoulder. So I actually had the opportunity yesterday to watch the interview that he did with Dan Rather, where they only took the clickbait. Brock is dead, is what he said. Well, he said way more than that. And if you look at that whole article, he talks about there's no record labels with advances, but non-recoupable advances. Because when Kiss started, their record company basically gave the money with the thought that they're never getting it back. That hasn't existed probably since the late 70s. However, go look at that article because a lot of what he says, it's like, yeah, say what you like about Gene, if you like him or not. He speaks the truth.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of things that happened that are no longer happening in terms of record deals that made, sort of music the golden age. But at the same point in time, even during that time, if artists didn't properly manage themselves, right?
Yeah.
They were in a heap of trouble.
Well,
right?
yes, and I mean we all know there's the history of Colonel Parker and Brian Epstein
Uh,
and Doc McGee and Sharon Osbourne.
John Fogerty, who didn't
Right.
have the rights to his own music.
Right. Yeah, and I mean,
Right.
the big thing in music that doesn't happen anymore, as far as I can tell. And God love Usher, he might have been the very last one that I can see that did it to any sort of degree with Justin Bieber. But you used to have artists like Tina Turner when she left Ike Turner. She was playing a small club in California, Los Angeles. David Bowie was in the audience and said, "I'm going to get you a record deal," and she was already internationally known. But it
Right.
took David Bowie to stick his neck out for her, and then private dancer, and boom, away we go. That doesn't happen anymore. People think that they're going to get scooped up by some major, and it's just John Bon Jovi used to do it a lot in the '80s, man.
I mean, it might happen if you get up and you're, one of these musicians who's out on tour asks you to get up on stage and play guitar or do something, sing to
Yeah.
the audience or whatever. I mean, there's those moments of discovery, and you've seen some of those moments of discovery, right? I mean, Dave Grohl's one of those guys that brings people up on stage. There's country artists that bring people up on stage. And it's a more common thing now. Keith Urban is famous for bringing people up on stage.
We are too at the Halifax Ale House. Come on down every Friday and Saturday night. Yeah, and I mean it's I think it's cool because it's it's a way to give back, and again the conversations that I have with people, and the whole thing about competition is actually is wild because it's the whole, hey man, great job, as they're crossing their arms and whispering to each other about how bad they think you suck, right? Um, and it's just the whole collaborative effort just doesn't really exist as much as it used to.
Yeah, I mean, there is a sort of this lack of collaboration. Now there are people that are on our record label who like to collaborate.
Yeah.
one of the an artist that's not on the label that you and I've talked to in the past is Lorraine Lewis. She's now doing collaborations with a lot of people. We're going to be having her on the show sometime in September. We're right now trying to nail down a date.
She's got a new show.
No doubt about it. I mean, she does Hollywood production stuff as well, right?
Her new show is all centered around Serena Williams.
Right. Well, that'll be interesting.
On Amazon. Hey, find Lorraine at. No, I'm just kidding. But I was talking to her about something else, and she
go watch her old show, The Ex-Wives of Rock.
You know what? The only reality TV show besides the O.J. Simpson trial that I watched in my life.
Yeah, I mean, The Ex-Wives of Rock was Lorraine Lewis's brainchild.
Yeah,
and she had a lot of friends and called in some friends to help her put the show together, and it was a great show, man. It's got a lot of great things that people probably never even knew.
No, it's and I mean, there's a flair of stage, canned drama in it. It's fine, like you expect it, but it was a great show. And let me tell you, when I say I've never watched a reality TV show, I don't know what the format of American Idol is. I don't know I don't know any of it because it's just so, to me, doesn't interest me. But that show, I liked it because I was fans of the band's music that those wives were married to.
Well, some nights this feels like a bit of a reality show.
My life's a reality show, man. Somebody followed me around on the camera.
I mean, sometimes I feel like the show here is a little bit like that, because you and I often, we don't always agree on certain things. We have different viewpoints, and I love the fact that you and I can go away from here, going, "Hey, he doesn't get my point." No, it's like a different viewpoint,
but I don't know. Well, I do. But, I don't know what it is that when this past Saturday, just give me 30 seconds because it's actually funny and sad at the same time. There was a local pizza shop that was running an ad, and it was basically, order a pizza, we'll give you a coupon for another pizza. So this guy goes on and says, this is the best pizza I had. Some girl goes on there. No, it's this place. And it was just like, and before you know it, they're bickering back and forth. And her last thing was, I'm allowed to have my opinion. Fair enough. But guess what? You put your opinion down, and then you got upset when somebody attacked you. And that's the piece of this whole thing that people don't get. They think they're entitled all the time. I just had it on one of my posts today. I did a post about something, and somebody jumped on and basically did a plug for something else on my post.
But you know what? I the thing is that put your take on and then move on. Don't even move.
Or how about this? How about don't put your take on?
Well, if your take is asked for, right? But that particular post didn't ask for any kind of comment.
Hey, it's my birthday. It's great. What do you think? You're an asshole. This is the problem, right? Honest to God.
That's when you should be able to turn off comments.
But see, this is a big thing. Like, people say to me all the time, you should just turn off comments or edit them. I don't believe in censorship, because the thing is if I make a post and somebody calls me out on something, I think people should see the exchange, because I can, I can dig in, but I can also be swayed if somebody convinces me that I'm way off base.
Well, the exchange is part of the fun, and keep it clean. Keep it for what it is. You're rendering your own opinion. Your job is not to try to convince the other person that you're right.
Nope, absolutely.
Your job is to properly convey your opinion, and maybe it resonates with people, and maybe it doesn't.
Well, and I had to remove myself from one of these drummer sites because this guy, God love him, he just bought this new drum set, and it was a beautiful drum set, but he had the two toms like really far, which is typically, you're a newbie. That's what happens. Your toms aren't nice and close together. So he's, hey, this is my new kit. I'm very proud of it. What do you think? Oh my God, you need to do this and this and this, and oh, you're an idiot. And it was just like, he didn't ask that. He just said, do you like my new kit? Why can't you just say yes? Right? It's this whole thing of, can't take feedback. Well, maybe didn't ask for feedback. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing is, you posted that piece of that card that says etiquette, right?
Yeah, I do that all.
So
I want to say something about that. That is because I always post etiquette, and then I post the Grinch, and it basically says along the lines of comments aren't always from me. Those come from people that are part of my group that don't feel comfortable in posting it
you
themselves.
sound like Miss Manners.
I'm just telling you how it goes.
Did you ever watch Miss Manners?
No.
Oh, you got to look it up.
Okay.
Look it up. Watch at least one episode.
Okay. How long is it? How long is
See,
it?
I have no idea. Well, it's longer than 18 seconds, so I guess
Yeah.
I guess it's
the
based on
the guy that's always preaching, hey, longer than 18 seconds, and I can't do the same thing. But welcome to my brain.
Yeah. I mean, here's the whole thing, and I think you're nailing some of that. I mean, part of the problem that we have, and I want to sort of tie this into the whole subject of publishing, right?
Yeah.
Publishing your music is about trying to get out in front of as many people as possible, right?
Yeah.
And here's the thing, right? Aside from all the other shitty stuff that's going on out there in the world, there is a certain platform that has 30% of the market or more.
Yep.
Right? It would make sense to market your music to that 30% of the market because 30% of something is better than nothing.
But here's the thing that I would say yes, except before you do that, I think you need to actually figure out who and what you want to be. Because if you're just doing that for the sake of views or success or whatever, it sounds. I hear people all the time say, "Oh well, what do they got to be upset about? They're rich, they're famous." And well, you know what? They're rich and they're famous, and a lot comes along. A lot of them get into it and they don't actually know what they want to be. They don't know what their game
And
plan is.
maybe the majority of artists that I've worked with over the years have said to me that their first motivation, and I talk to everybody. I mean, this is all part of the consultation when an artist comes on board the label. I said the same thing to you,
Yeah.
right? And had the same conversation with Michelle. I've had it with every artist as part of the consultation process when people come on board the label. And I'm like, what are your ultimate goals? And I think that's one of the things we need to kind of get back to. And you and I've talked about, doing some sort of a live program for the artist on the label.
Yep.
To talk about this very, very topic, about how do I re-envision what our goal is? What are we after at the end of the day? But invariably, every artist that I work with has said to me, this isn't about money per se. Yes, if I make some money at this, yeah, that's great. I know I'm not going to get rich off digital music. But the caveat there is I want to get my music in front of as many people as possible and let them decide whether it's of value to them.
Yep. I agree with that. I mean, my daily struggle, I kid you not, and I'm very fortunate that actually, I shouldn't say that. It bugs me, it pains me, it annoys me on a daily basis is when I see something that I think is of ill quality in terms of content, in terms of the person delivering the message, and they have
Yep.
millions of viewers. And I do a piece on somebody that is like I think an amazing person slash and it has hundreds or thousands. It really pisses me off. And what Michael Brandvold certainly has talked me off that ledge a number of times. But what it comes down to really is that people like stupid things. And I don't even say that to get a joke. That's just the way the world works now is they want something that's going to bring them comfort because life is just so weird.
And I don't want to talk about this very long. I mean, there's that video that circulated about, the god-awful performance of the, of the American national anthem.
Yeah.
And all the views and all the watches that it got, and artists with music that has far more value than that, at least in our estimation, doesn't get that level of attention. There's something desperately wrong in the world.
Well, I mean, so My buddy Peter James, do not sway from your true product and mission just to conform to the 30%. I love that. Peter and I talk. I won't say on
Yeah,
a daily
but that's
basis,
not,
but
I don't see that as, but you okay, so here's my argument to that, okay? Conforming to the 30, this isn't about conforming to the 30%. It's getting your music in front of that 30% and letting them decide. If you don't put it in front of them, they'll never see it. It's not on the platform that they listen to.
no, but walk that back. Do you want that 30% to be looking at your music is my question.
Those might be the very people that would part with their hard-earned dollars to go to your shows. Those might be the people that buy your merchandise.
Okay.
Those might be, listen, those people could be a revenue stream for you down the road. We've talked about this before. Dedicated, committed, and engaged followers.
Fair enough. So what it comes down to, when we started Barstools and Bandtalk, this was a daily argument. We should go and interview this person. Well, why? Because I didn't, I might not think that they were a person of integrity because they got tons of numbers. Okay, great. So for the sake of numbers, we're going to interview somebody that we don't believe in and sell our souls for that, right? And then, you know, or do you want to put the sandwich board on there and say, hey, anybody and all? What I'm saying is the first thing has to be integrity, and
You're
your
missing,
integrity
but you're
means
missing it.
I'm not.
You're missing a huge piece here.
No,
You're
I'm not.
missing a huge piece here about the digital world. Okay, it's not about that. It's about putting it out there and letting as many people see it as possible and letting them decide whether it's of value to them. Okay, it's an art form. You're putting it out
What I'm
there.
saying is, are they of value to you?
Well, you don't know that. How
Well,
can you say? How can you? No. How can you say that? Definitely, Sean. How can you say that that's going to be the way that it is? Because you don't have. Give me some hard data.
well, that's fair. So say the
No, no,
30%.
no. Give me some analytics. Give me some hard data. Tell me.
You mean right now?
No, but you're willing to make that assertion, but you're not. You don't have any data to back it up. Don't make the assertion if you don't have the data to back it up. I
No.
got tons of research data to back up what I'm telling you about
Well, that's
this.
good, but we're coming from a different place because for me, it's not an all or nothing thing. I don't
But that
necessarily. No, no, hold on a second.
right.
I don't necessarily go that 30%. That's the gravy. Because I will tell you that 30%, by and large, is the person that has shared, a 10
Well,
gazillion times that video of that poor girl that was put in front of thing. 10 gazillion times of the girl that's getting the reality show that did the spitting thing. Tens of millions of times of a bunch of that's the 30%. So what I'm saying is if you want that audience, be careful what you wish for.
but you don't know what that 30% holds for you is what I'm saying. It's an unknown. You don't know that until you explore that territory. It's like uncharted territory because if you don't explore it, you don't know what's there. There may be some hidden gems that you're missing out on is what I'm saying. All because you disagree with the business model of the platform that carries the music, right?
I'll agree to that, but I could also say that I could walk out my door here when we're done the show and get hit by a bus. Very unlikely, but it could happen.
I
So
look at every platform as a vehicle to fulfill what our artist's goal is, and that's to get their music in front of as many people as possible.
but you know what? Most artists, and I will fight this to the death, don't know what their goal is because they will say that. They will say that. I'm one of them. I can vouch for this.
Well,
Yeah.
let's have a poll. Let's put a poll out to our artists on the label and see what they tell us.
That's cool. But then the
Okay.
second part of the poll is what's your plan to get there?
Okay. All right. So we can come up with some ideas around that, put a poll out there. And you know what? We might make the poll public and see if we can get lots of participation on it. Maybe this is a good thing.
I don't disagree. I just it's a funny thing, right? Because at the end of the day, it's a business, and the whole idea is to have success and make money. But by the same token, I'm not I'm not an all or nothing guy, and if I was, I'd probably be a lot more successful. But I still like to believe that you can do something, and it's for the right reasons, which
Yeah.
oftentimes it isn't.
I think there's a lot of flaws all over the place. There's flies in the ointment. There's flaws in this software that we use for the broadcast in the program. That's why there's some glitches periodically.
Yeah.
I believe that that's part of it. But I think at the same point in time, when we talk about these numbers, look at how off YouTube numbers have been, and they're driven by Google Analytics.
Yeah, and this is why I always try to keep Michael Brandvold in my thoughts when numbers are being talked about, because again, there's ways that you can get them. You can get them organically. You can buy them. You can do all kinds of different sorts of things. But at the end of the day, it's that 1,000 loyal people, right?
Dean Bow, love you, man. He says, I'm in that 30% maybe ... Yet I spread to others, and hopefully the others don't watch, or maybe a few do ... LOL, pub crawl. I love you both. It's my favorite time of Wednesday night.
So I will tell you, if you don't have Dean Bow as a friend, like he does this thing every day where he goes to the duck pond by where he lives and he films ducks, and he is a supporter of music around here like you wouldn't believe. And like he'll just randomly, I didn't see him for like over a year, and then he showed up at one of our shows one night, and it was just like, man, oh man, like where you been? He's so supportive of people around here in music.
You can tell that you and I both grew up on competitive sports.
Oh, absolutely, and I always won.
Because you were playing hockey, I was playing baseball, golf, whole bunch of other competitive sports, and man, I love to win.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's really funny, right? Like I every now and again I'll be like, man, I miss playing hockey for that team aspect, right? Because sometimes in the music business you feel like you're all by yourself, and then you'll talk to somebody that's going through something that's exactly like you, and it's like, hey, I'm not special. I thought I was special, and it turns out I'm not. Right?
Yeah, I mean, ain't none of us really all that special. I mean, like I said, analytics have been off. Google Analytics have been off. There's just a whole bunch of things that are not quite out there. Does it mean that all of these services are somewhat flawed in some shape or form? Probably. I mean, it's only as good as the net, and we've had a few glitches on the internet this last little while.
But I mean, if you look at any business, but pardon me, the music business as a whole, I mean, it's been freaking flawed since well before you and I got involved in it, right? You hear the stories of managers screwing clients over, and I read one today. It was some emails that were captured from the singer of Great White to the band when they were kicking him out, and you read some of it, and you're going like, I just thought it was my band that went through this, but this is crazy.
I mean, you said at the very beginning of the show about a particular service that made over $9 billion, right?
Yeah.
That same company paid 70% of that $9+ billion out in royalties.
Oh my! It's just another pitch that we love Spotify.
And that went to rights holders. That money went to rights holders. Now, rights holders are not necessarily the artists. We've talked about this, and a lot of artists, as I've said, have given away their rights to their music, and published houses own those rights to their music. We've had artists who have sold their catalogs of music.
Yep.
Some of them for reported millions and millions of dollars. But they've sold their catalogs of music because they can't imagine anybody succeeding them that would be interested in running a record label. So they sell off their catalogs on future earnings and go, here it is. I'm going to use this now for something.
Well, that's legacy planning 101, because even in a traditional business, you talk to people who have run businesses for years, and they wanted their kids to go to school and get good jobs because they didn't want them to go through the struggles they did. But then when they're looking for one of their children to take the business over, they're not interested because they saw the struggle.
And I think that might have been what happened with Kiss, why they sold off their catalog, right? Because here's an interesting thing. How many artists, and I've talked to a couple of them, that had significant catalogs that sold them off and said, my family have made it clear to me they're not interested in running a record company.
Yeah, 100%. And in the comments, send your cards and letters, because I'm going to make a comment that may or may not get me people mad. But I'm a firm believer in you should get paid for the work that you do. So if you're a publisher and you've bought the work, no problem. But if you've done nothing but bought the work, I don't necessarily think you should get the lion's share of it all. And by the other token, if you're an artist and all you're doing is performing the song, maybe you should get a performance royalty, but you shouldn't get the lion's share. And this is where the system is all meant. There's just a real socialistic kind of point of view to how the riches should be dispersed, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons we do what we do at Any Tunes Records. Why artists here earn 75 cents on every dollar.
Yeah.
And we're in the same boat as, think about that as an artist and how it affects you as an artist, this remuneration process.
Yep.
Now think about that 37 times over, because that happens to me every single day because of the sheer number of artists that we represent on the label. So when you look at that, you're not getting there quick. You're getting there gradually. And none are that great. None of them pay well. None of them pay that well. I mean, you can't call a 16th of a cent a pay well plan. That is not
absolutely.
a retirement. That's not a retirement plan. That's not even 16 cents on the dollar, man. That's a 16th of a cent per stream. 16 streams to make a dollar.
And I think things like that are the reason
sorry.
why
16 streams to make a penny. Sorry.
But I think that's the reason why you see the everyone for themselves mentality, because I don't want to give you a 16th of what I'm making, but the bigger picture is, it's easier to do it as a team than it is to do it alone, and that's, I think, what's missing in this business. Like I have this conversation every day. I've got other stuff to do. I don't have to try to get the music scene in my town working properly. It hasn't worked since I got in the business. I'm in it 35 years. But I'd love to see it so that it works, that everybody gets paid and the venues are happy and the musicians are happy. But there's always something that happens where somebody comes along and they figured it out and they're going to do it this way, and it just goes off. And I'm a firm believer that people should get paid for what they do.
Well, and I mean, that's a great concept. Do I get paid for everything I do? No.
No.
Because of the model that we run. It's an artist-centric model. It's designed to minimize and keep front-end costs down for artists. So as a rule, I don't ask people for money up front to do work.
Okay, so not to toot my own horn here. That's not my. So anybody that's on the Sean bandwagon where they want to start throwing mud, it's not about that. However, there's an artist that I know who put a single out, who I talked to and said I could probably help you. They decided, because I basically told them what that would look like, to pay some company in Toronto to push their song. Right. And this is after I worked on, one of them was Michelle's, but after I worked on 3 separate artists. I didn't totally do it. I was part of a group that did it. That had almost 200,000 views on YouTube. Right. So I figured out how people were doing it, and I listened and I took notes, and it's like, okay, well, I could do a 30th of that, get you whatever that equates. They decided that they didn't want to pay me, but they paid a place in Toronto. Fair enough.
Right.
They have not cracked 300 views on their video. That was a month ago.
Yeah. It's interesting. And I'm going to give you an interesting statistic here right now. Okay.
Uh-huh.
So here's an interesting statistic, and I've got to find it here. I'm not going to tell you who this is, but it's an independent artist who decided that they were going to work with a specific label, let's say.
Yep.
Okay. And I think their belief was that they were going to do better than they were doing before.
Yeah.
At least that's what I thought. That was the impression that I got. They were looking for something that was going to perform better than they had got before. So they're looking at it going, okay, we're looking at better performance. Now, what does that mean? It's interesting because when you look at it, there's a particular single on that release that has got a ton of views or a ton of streams.
Yeah.
Right. And the other stuff that's come out since then hasn't done well at all.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting because when you look at it, we're talking thousands of streams versus hundreds of streams.
Yeah.
Right. And if the goal is to really get it in front of more people, those streams oftentimes represent more people listening to music, especially if you're getting back statistics and looking at the number of listeners compared to the current number of listeners to the new stuff that's been released.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And periodically, when you're able to look at the statistics of that music and you look at time periods, you go, huh, there's something in those stats that is telling about what happened differently. Right?
Yeah.
So the one is a multiple release, which is multiple tracks, and the other one is a single release. Which one do you think is done better collectively?
Probably the single.
Exactly. And why do you think the single has performed better than a whole album that was dropped?
Because who's going to listen to a whole album when they can listen to a single for 18 seconds to decide whether they like it or not?
Right, exactly. So if your hook is in that first 20, maybe somebody will give you 30 seconds.
Yep.
But if the hook isn't in there in that first 20 to 30 seconds that you're pulling the listener in, they're moving on to the next thing because that's all they got time to listen to find some new music.
Yep. And it's I'll tell you what's interesting too is everybody kind of rips the millennials about how they do things, and my experience the last little bit has been the Gen X guy that has finally figured out how to use Google, and now all of a sudden he's a know-it-all, and he knows how to push all this stuff better than anybody because he read he watched some podcast from Frank Beto, and
right.
Boom, there he is. And nothing against Frank Beto, people love him, but a lot of these, here's a tip. A lot of these things that you see where, hey, if you want to buy my system, they'll give you a free nugget, but it's like then you got to pay for the rest. You can pay all you want, but here's the thing. You actually got to do the work and if you're not doing the work, don't spend the money because it's not going to get you what you want. I'm a poster child for that in my years of being on this planet.
Right. Here's an interesting thing. So, since taking over a particular artist, we've re-released 2 singles by those artists.
Yeah.
And since we re-released them, they've been gradually climbing from where they were originally. So we took the two strongest songs that they had released and we re-released those songs.
Yep.
And as singles, as part of a waterfall process for releasing the whole album. And it's really interesting because when you look at those numbers, they've gone up, right?
Yeah.
We've got one that's nearly doubled in streams since we re-released it.
Yep.
Now the doubling in streams, now we're over 10,000.
Well, and I mean, anytime somebody says to me, I want to put out a whole, I just stop talking and I don't even say a word.
Yeah, there actually are levels within streaming services when your songs reach a certain threshold of streams that the analytics unlock your song to get out in front of more people.
Yep. Yep.
There are algorithms within those streaming services, things like suggestions that come up, editorial playlists, things like curated playlists. Those are the things that we really try to get our artist music on. And here's an interesting thing. And people go, well, this month I only had, 37 listeners on my profile, and last week I had 439.
Yep.
What's going on with that? Well, what could be going on with that is instead of listening to your music off of your profile, they might be listening to your music off their favorite public playlist.
Yep. And there's there's numbers, and then there's reasons for why things happen, and you got to delve into them. There's no question. That one to me, the monthly listeners thing to me has always been the flightiest kind of thing, because really it's like the cool kid at school. He shows up in a leather jacket and everybody flocks to him, and then 2 days later, the other cool kid shows up with a better jacket and all those. It's to me, it's kind of that, right? And it's not enduring. It's not gooey in that they stay. You're constantly pitching people to come back, right?
But those are the people that are not clicking the subscribe.
Yeah, 100%.
Right? Those are the people that are coming on, listening to what you got, and they're not committed enough to subscribe yet.
Yep.
So they're not a follower. What you're looking for is followers. And this is where, again, those analytics, if you don't have access to those analytics, it's really important to have that, because it gives you a sense of what level of engagement you've got.
Yep.
And when you get some analytics that tell you your demographics and whatnot, that's your target audience. Those are the people that are going to appreciate your music the most. But there are also fringe groups that are on the edge of discovery, which could be another demographic that you might be able to pull in.
Well, and I'm telling you, go out and find people that when they say, "Hey, give my channel a subscribe," put your channel in the comments. I'll do the same. Those are the people you want to get to, because anybody that sends me something, if I'm not subscribed, I subscribe. Just because I know what a grind it is, and it's not hard to do. It's not hard to do at all.
Well, it's an interesting. Here's an interesting piece of interaction. Okay, so this particular song I'm talking about got 452 streams over the last 28 days. Okay,
Yeah,
104 unique listeners, an average of 4.3 streams per listener. What's that tell you?
it tells me that it's resonating with an audience.
Right, and they're listening to the song more than once because they like it.
Yep.
Right, and because you're seeing those repeat numbers, those are people that are listening to the song in its entirety. They're not listening to the first 18 or 20 seconds. They're listening to the whole track.
Yep.
This is where I say that these analytics are valuable, because they really help you gain some insights into who's listening to your music. And again, I think sometimes as artists too, and then we're in the second period of overtime here, so we're going to have to end this soon. But it's an interesting thing when you start looking at levels of engagement and how artists sometimes change their own goalposts or move their own goalposts.
Well, back to the goals again. So I'm doing some work with a group that owns some venues here, and we talked to them, and they mentioned this one act, and they say, well, they get X amount of people, and their bar sales are great. And I'm like, okay, cool. Is that what you want to be? Well, what do you mean? Is that what you want to be? Because they're typically a Legion band that does well in the Legions, and if that's what you want to be, then that's your audience. But to them, it was just like, oh, well, they do it and they do it. I said, okay, so if it's like Horseshoes one week that does it and that band the next, you don't have a brand. You got to figure out what you want to do. And this is what I'm saying with goals and what you want. People just, that's the first part that you got to figure out before you do anything.
Yeah, I'm going to put our IndieTunes music support group in here. If you aren't a member of this group, I'm asking you to join it, because we can put polls out in that group. So Sean and I have been talking about putting a poll together. We've got a little bit of work to do. Hopefully we can get it done soon. But putting the polls out, talking about, what are your goals and as an artist, and then what do you think the steps are to get there? So we'll come up with maybe we'll come up with the top 5 or something like that for each category.
Yeah.
Reasonable?
It does. And I if I could, I want to give one last spin. I know we're late, and I
no problem, man.
Bounce onto something after this. But a guy that I follow that people know, Matt Starr, he played drums with Ace Frehley and Mr. Big, and so Matt's a coach as well as a drummer, and he does these live things. And so he had a couple of really cool ones, but one of his ones that he had was about that girl that sang the anthem. And Matt's exact thing was, if you go in there to bash her, you're not really part of the community. You're not a musician. You're just somebody that wants to sit in the crowd and throw tomatoes. And I thought about it. It was like, because guess what? I kind of did a little bit, but then I started feeling more sorry for how she was handled, not necessarily who she was. Um,
Right.
and I thought that was great. And the other thing that Matt said too, and we should delve into at some point, is $100 gigs suck, and why they suck. Um,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
but it's all part of this. What are your goals? I mean, if $100 gigs are what you want, hey guys, what about a guy that nobody knows except for everyone in his hometown because he played in BCDC for years? How does he get his August 7th release heard by actual people? What promotion services would you recommend? Can you help? Do you know Steve Montgomery?
I don't know Steve, but we're always happy to listen to what you got, what you're willing to put out there, and either become directly involved by supporting you as an independent record label, or you know we're always willing to share information with people. We recognize that some people want to stick around with the DIY approach to music, so you
Yeah,
know
I don't know.
we I don't fault people like that. There are some successful people who are doing DIY and doing it just fine.
Yeah, I'm of the mindset that you cannot do everything well. I do very little well. And so when you get people, our keyboard player Darren does everything well. I mean, like, I finally found something. I don't even remember what it was, but I finally found something that he doesn't do well the other day, and I was like, oh my god, you don't do that well. But the problem with do it yourself is that you'll do a part and you'll focus on it, and then something else pulls you away, and then if that's not fully wrapped up, the momentum goes down, and then you try to go, like, it's like sticking fingers in the dam that's leaking,
you
right?
you need to build a team, and that's something you're good at doing, Sean. I think I know that you guys, that's one of the things that you guys practice out there. I know Michelle is interested in building the bridges with people, and networking with people and making good relationships with people. And I think that's part of it. That whole networking thing is extremely important.
Yeah, and again, people think networking is weird, and it's not. Like, this gentleman I was telling you at the beginning, I had a conversation with him, and within 5 minutes, not only did we know some people in the business, but he knew a friend of mine that I grew up with that moved to Vancouver, two other friends that I used to play with on and it was just like, this guy used to drum tech for Mickey Curry that played with Brian Adams,
Right.
and you know, and I'm sitting there going, I said to Miss Ryder, I sent her a text. I said, "You know how close you are to that Headpins group if they're ever looking for a singer? Like, I just found out now. Boom, seriously.
Fourth period of overtime
Yeah,
here.
we
Um,
gotta go.
here's an interesting thing. So you guys can always submit your music to indietunes@gmail.com. Send me 2 or 3 MP3s along with an MPK. Anything you think is relevant. We share Google Drives with all of our artists because it's a way that we do file sharing. It's great to do that, and it keeps us all honest and keeps us all moving forward. Well, I want to thank you, Sean, as always.
Yeah, man.
Spirited conversation tonight, man. And I know we both have varying opinions about those things, but I think those differences of opinions is what makes us strong when we're willing to challenge each other respectfully, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, that goes for anybody. Like, you know, I my my whole thing growing up was, I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm going to tell you. And I've come to the realization that I'm often wrong. I'm wrong more than I ever realized. But when it comes to music, nobody's ever wrong because it's their opinion and it's what moves them. And there's certain parts of the music business that you might be approaching wrong. That are things that are tried and true that you're not doing. But hey, do what
It,
you
it,
want.
it was
It's your
it was really interesting because a friend of mine is having surgery done, and he was talking to the surgeon, and the surgeon said to him, he said, "So you don't think maybe this is the right way to approach things?" He says, "As a patient, you have the right to be wrong."
well, yeah. I know the people that go and they Google the operation, and yeah, I know.
Don't listen to Dr. Google. Whatever you do not listen to
No,
Dr. Google. Half the time Dr. Google is on drugs.
well, it's like when I get somebody that's a real gearhead drummer, like they love to talk gear, and I've never been that guy. I appreciate good, solid, well-made gear, but I'll eventually will get to the point. What are you doing for this? Go talk to my friend Chris Potty because he's the one that guides me on that. I don't know. You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
Yeah.
Well, it's time for us to sign off. Over 4 periods of overtime. We're not going to do a head-to-head tonight, a one-on-one. But we are going to be back next week, probably continuing on with this subject matter because, like I said, publishing and everything associated with it is extremely important in the way your music gets out there in front of people. And getting a good sense of what people are really after is really important to us as well. Well, Kenny from TUNZ Records, my co-host Sean McKenna from the podcast Barstools and Bandtalk, Rimshots with Sean. This has been the Indie Show. I am Kenny. You're not. And then have a great